withholding tax. What is withholding tax? So if you remember, I had given you some overview of withholding tax in the last session. So withholding tax in Indian terms, it is nothing but your TDS, tax deducted at source. So whenever you are making, whenever you create and like enter an invoice against a vendor, say take an example, there is an invoice amount of 10,000 rupees. So what law says is for certain kind of vendors, you need to withhold some percentage. So what kind of vendors and what is the percentage? You need not break your head, because that is the business policy and that is as per the law, and business user will be able to provide the particular information to you based on the corresponding tax law. So if they say that I want to deduct say 10%, so for out of 10,000, 10% will be deducted, say 1,000 will be deducted out of the 10,000 invoice amount, and that 1,000 will be paid to the income tax department on behalf of the vendor, and remaining 9,000 will be paid to the vendor. So similarly, whenever a tax is sorry, when a salary is paid to you, say if your salary income is say 10,000 rupees per month, so what your employer does, he is going to deduct some tax. So out of 10,000, he is going to deduct 1,000, and he is going to pay that 1,000 to the income tax department, and he is going to pay you the net salary of 9,000 to you. That 1,000 whatever he has paid to the income tax department, at the end of the financial year, he is going to give a tax certificate saying that he has deducted so and so tax, and when you are filing your tax returns, you can show that particular amount to your taxation authority. So similarly, even in Oracle, like whatever the withholding tax, whatever is being deducted at the end of the financial year, we need to give a kind of a certificate, okay, to the vendor saying that this is the withholding tax, whatever we have deducted and paid to the income tax department, and it is your responsibility to file your income tax return and appropriately pay the tax, and you can take a credit for the withholding tax whatever we have deducted and paid to the income tax department. Okay, so the tds functionality whatever we are calling is equivalent of the withholding tax. Now let us see how we can create an invoice with withholding tax. So there are a couple of steps involved in the withholding tax. So first we need to create something called withholding tax codes, and then we need to assign that particular withholding tax code to the vendor screen or in the vendor or vendor side. Then whenever you create an invoice for that particular vendor site, automatically the withholding tax code gets defaulted and withholding tax will be deducted against the vendor. Okay. So what I did is, instead of what do you call in order to save time, I had already created those steps. I'll show you those things.
So you mean to say that the withholding tax setups will be at the supplier site level?
Yes.
Apart from that, any other setups, Arvind?
Couple of things. You need to first create the withholding tax codes, and then associate that particular withholding tax code to the supplier site. And in the supplier site, there is a checkbox called allow withholding tax. So you need to also check that particular checkbox. So these are the three steps. Okay. And before you even create the withholding tax code, there is something called tax authority. Okay. So as I said that in this example, going back to this example, so this 1,000 is deducted out of the vendor invoice, and 9,000 is paid to the vendor, and 1,000 is paid to the income tax department. So what is income tax department? We, in order to pay that 1,000 to the income tax department, we should even define the income tax department as the vendor. Am I right? Because in Oracle AP, in order to make a payment of even a single rupee, and if you want to enter that in AP module, you need to have a vendor. So we can make a payment of that 1,000 rupees to the income tax department only once you create the income tax department as also a vendor in AP module. Okay, so the first step is first create the income tax department as the vendor. Okay, which is nothing but creating of the income tax India. Okay, in the current example as the vendor. So go to supplier, entry, create supplier. Supplier, entry. So you need to click on create supplier and start creating the what do you call, the vendor of income tax India. But as I had already created, I'll just bring that up. income tax India. So there is no difference in the way you create your what do you call normal vendor and the tax authority vendor. There is only one difference which I'll show you, but otherwise you just enter the supplier name and click on save, and then you need to create a kind of a supplier site similar to for a supplier normal supplier you create a supplier site. Similarly for the income tax vendor or tax authority vendor also you need to create one site. Okay. But there is one checkbox. You need to check the checkbox in order to identify that this is actually a tax authority vendor, not a normal vendor. Okay. So what you need to do is go to yeah go to this organization, and in the overview there is something called type. You need to specify the type as tax authority. So that is already mentioned in the your BR100 document. Okay. So this is very important. If you do not specify the type as tax authority, then system does not understand this vendor as the tax type tax authority vendor. Okay. But all other details are same. Okay. Just create one supplier site or the vendor site. Okay. With the address of the vendor. So in this case your income tax department is located in New Delhi, so just put a New Delhi address and address name, which is nothing but your vendor name, and there are no other extra details. Again you need to select this purchasing payment checkboxes. We have done the same thing even for the normal vendor. Go to the address book.
Arvind, just a quick check. For tax authorities, do we purchase anything?
We
It's
do not.
anyway legal vendor for the government, right? It's only the payable only, right?
Yeah, you can check only the payment. You need not do any kind of a purchasing because we do not generally use this particular vendor in the purchasing module. But as I said, that the
Okay.
reason why we are creating this particular income tax department as a vendor is you need to make a payment to this particular vendor. So in that example of 1,000 rupees, so in order to make a payment,
Yeah.
then obviously you need to create that as a vendor.
Yeah.
So okay, one more what do you call the implementation considerations. Okay, so in some of the business scenarios, where like there could be something called a one-time suppliers. So you purchase something from one particular vendor for say 20,000 rupees. Okay, and then again it's just only like at a once in a year you purchase from the particular vendor, or like just only once, not even once in a year, just only once you purchase from that particular vendor, and you do not want to. And there are a lot of such kind of vendors wherein you do not want to what you call create them as a vendors, because you do not want to have the lot of maintenance. Okay. In those cases there are a couple of options there. One option would be, okay, directly pass an entry directly in the GL. I mean, wherein if you are not creating any kind of, if you are not making electronic funds transfer, you are not generating any check, and you are not bothered about entering that entry directly in AP, you can directly create an entry in GL, say expense account debit, your bank account credit. That's one scenario, which some of the business users may not like. The other scenario would be you can create a supplier by name miscellaneous supplier. The name of the supplier will be just the miscellaneous supplier. Okay. And then whenever you try to purchase such kind of a miscellaneous items, then when you are creating an AP invoice, select the vendor name as miscellaneous supplies, and then complete that particular invoice and make the payment. That's it. So for all different kind of miscellaneous purchases, whatever you purchase from different miscellaneous vendors, you create an invoice with a vendor name of miscellaneous suppliers or supplies, and then create an invoice and make the payment. We have done that in couple of our implementation projects. Okay. Okay, so the first step is creating of the tax type authority, and next step is creating of the withholding tax codes. Okay, so this is the navigation, setup tax codes, setup tax codes. So what is this code? So code is the definition wherein you specify what is the percentage. So it should be something like WHT 10%. That's the name of the code, and that will be, this particular code will be associated in the supplier side definition. I'll show you that in a while. And then whenever you create an invoice against that particular supplier set, automatically the code will be defaulted, and then system calculates that particular percentage of the withholding tax amount on that invoice. So this is the code which I had already created. I'll show you that. So what you need to do is put your cursor here, enter the tax code name. It's just a naming convention. It could be even ABC, but we need to use the proper naming convention, WS 10%. Okay, and you need to specify what is the tax authority. If you remember, like this is what we have created as the income tax India as the vendor. So you need to specify the tax authority wherein you want to pay that deducted amount. So the income tax India is the tax authority vendor and the corresponding vendor side. So in this particular drop down, it will show you only those vendors where the type is set as tax authority. So when I'm testing this, so I purposely for one of the test scenario, I purposely did not set the type as tax authority. So once you come to this particular screen, that will not be coming in the drop down. So you need to ensure that the type is selected as P13. Okay. So this type needs to be selected as tax authority. Otherwise, this will not come in the drop down. Okay. And this is the GL account, or the tax account where you want to push that particular 1,000 rupees. And here is, you need to specify the percentage. What is the percentage? So there are again different kind of a withholding tax calculation. One pretty straightforward calculation is just do a 10%. Okay, and if you want, you can even enter the rates. So you want to calculate say 10% if the effective date of the invoice is between 1st of January to 30th of June. And from 1st of July, if you want to use a different rate, then you need to put a one more cursor here. From 1st of July, say 20%. So that means depending on the invoice date, if the invoice date falls between this date and this date, this will be the rate. And if the invoice date falls between any of these dates, then this will be the rate, something like that. So this is just a flat rate. And if you go for a more complex scenarios, you can say that amount ranges. So if you say amount ranges, there is something called period limit and amount ranges. If you go for amount ranges, you can say that if your invoice amount is more than say 100,000 rupees, then my withholding tax percentage should be say 5%. If it is less than 100,000 rupees, say it's only 2%, something like that. And if you go for say period limit also, then you can say that for one financial year, okay, my withholding tax amount should be only say 10 what do you call, for one financial year up to 50,000 rupees. If the invoice amount is say up to 50,000 rupees, do not calculate any withholding tax. If it exceeds more than 50,000, then start calculating the what do you call, the withholding tax. So that will be per financial year. So our financial year is what, April 17 to March 18. So if you say that period limit and per less than 50,000 rupees is my invoice amount, okay, then withholding tax is 0%. If your invoice amount is more than 50,000, then system should start calculating withholding tax of say 10%. Again, when you go for the period limit, so what system is doing is, it is not just checking that corresponding invoice amount, it is actually checking up all the invoices of that particular vendor in that financial year. So taking this example, I created an invoice in April for 10,000 rupees, so there will be no withholding tax. I created an invoice for say 40,000 in May, there will not be any withholding tax. So big, okay, 10,000 plus 40,000. In June, I created an invoice of say 1,000 rupees. Then system will calculate withholding tax of 10%. The reason being, it has already crossed that 50,000 limit. Okay, up to 50,000 zero, but if you exceed 10,000 50,000, then system should start calculating a withholding tax of 10%. So such various kind of scenarios are there. Okay, I mean, I'll not be able to explain each and every scenario. So if I start doing that, then I think only for withholding tax it will take a couple of hours. So I'm just explaining you that there are various different kind of scenarios are like ways are there to calculate the withholding tax. So we are going with the flat rate of 10%. So if you go with the flat rate of 10%, then irrespective of the period limit, irrespective of the period amount, flat 10% of the invoice amount will be calculated as the withholding tax. Okay, so this is the withholding tax code. Okay, now we'll go and try to assign this particular withholding tax code to our vendor site.
A quick question, Arvind. The definition you did for withholding tax, right? Do we have any link to the regular tax codes in EB tax?
Okay, so most of the people will get confused the withholding tax with the EB tax. Both are completely different. Okay, and in 11I, your tax codes, the normal tax codes and withholding tax codes, both can be defined in AP module. But from an R12 perspective, the normal tax is totally moved to EB tax module. Withholding tax code is still available in the AP module. So both are completely different. Both are different. Okay.
Okay.
And these do not have any link with the EB tax.
Okay.
Okay, go to the suppliers entry. Bring up our vendor. Okay, now go to the address book. Okay, so these are our supplier sites. Sorry, one second. It should be under tax reporting. Yeah, it's under tax reporting. One second, tax reporting or tax details. It should be under one of these two. Yeah, it's under tax details. Yeah, okay. Allow withholding tax. So this checkbox should be checked. If you remember, we checked this checkbox even in the payable options. So once you check the checkbox in the payable options for all these new suppliers, automatically the checkbox will be checked at the supplier site level. Okay, and then at a supplier, that's at the supplier header level. This is the supplier header level. Okay, and then at a supplier site level also again there is a checkbox. So there could be a scenario that for one supplier site you want to enable the withholding tax, for other you do not want to enable the withholding tax. Okay, now we have enabled this withholding tax checkbox. If you want, you can disable this or you can enable this. Okay, if I enable the checkbox, so this is where I need to enter the withholding. It says we invoice withholding tax group, which is nothing but the withholding tax code whatever we have created. So click on this search button, click on this go. It is going to show all the withholding tax codes whatever we have defined. As we have defined only one withholding tax code, that is coming up in the drop down. So this is you should follow a proper naming convention, so that by looking at the name you can identify that okay, this is the 10% withholding tax code. Okay, click on quick select. Okay, and then click on save. Okay, now we have associated a withholding tax of 10%. Now try to create an invoice. Okay, what I will do is for one particular supplier site I allow withholding tax. For ABC Ahmedabad I will allow withholding tax. For ABC Hyderabad I do not want to allow withholding tax. Okay, and now let us see what will happen when I try to create. For Ahmedabad, it is going to calculate 10% withholding tax. For Hyderabad, it should not calculate any withholding tax. Okay, so let us save this. Okay, save.
Hey, Arvind, quick question. These withholding tax codes are global in nature or specific to a particular OU?
They are specific
when you
to
define the tax codes.
They are specific to OU. The reason being, setup tax. Can you see operating unit name here?
Okay, okay.
So when you click on down arrow, or when you try to create a new withholding tax code, see the operating unit is automatically defaulted. So in the screens wherein generally you can see operating unit, so that means it is OU specific. Okay, and go to something called payment terms. Okay, so payment terms is nothing but 30 days, 50 days, and all the stuff. Here you do not see any kind of a what you call operating unit name or ledger name or something like that. So these are actually global. Okay, try to create a new payment terms here and go to a different operating unit and try to select this particular payment term or query for the payment terms or try to use these payment terms when you create your invoice. It will be available because these are global.
Okay.
Okay, now try to create an invoice. ABC vendor, and we'll try to create with ABC Ahmedabad. Okay, invoice date of 30th of September 2017, invoice number ABC 200, invoice amount of 100,000 INR. Okay, go to distributions. I think I need to remember the account so that I need not always do this. So it's 7460. Okay, 100,000 you have created. Okay, generally the withholding tax amount will be calculated at the time of invoice validation. If you remember, there is a checkbox in the payable options wherein we specify at what time we want to what do you call generate the withholding tax. I'll show you that in a while, but let me now try to click on actions, validate. Okay, before I click on actions and validate, here you can see withholding tax amount is blank. Okay, here you can also go to folder, show field. There's a field called withholding tax amount. It's already there, maybe. Tax amount. See, this is the normal tax amount. It's a withheld amount. Okay, so this is blank. Okay, now click on actions, validate. Okay, here you can see withholding tax amount is 10,000 and you can see withheld amount is 10,000. So out of 100,000, 10,000 is withheld and 90,000 is the remaining amount. And if you go to lines, you can see automatically a withheld amount of 10,000 is deducted or reduced, and this particular account is actually from where exactly this account is coming up. Any idea?
The tax code setup.
Exactly, in the withholding tax code setup we have specified a GL account, so that is what is this particular account. Okay, so now for this particular vendor, okay, you need to make a payment when you actually try to make a payment process. Okay, do a payment batch process or single payment. When you do a payment, system will allow you to make a payment of only 90,000 rupees. And even though you make a payment of 90,000, this amount paid will be automatically, it shows 100,000 rupees, because the 10,000 amount, okay, whatever is being deducted here, for the 10,000 amount we need to pay the 10,000 to whom?
Tax authority.
Exactly. So as we need to make a payment of 10,000 to tax authority, and as 10,000 is deducted here, now as we have validated, automatically a 10,000 rupees invoice is created in the name of income tax India. Now we should be able to query that particular invoice. So as soon as you click on actions, validate, 10,000 is deducted here and automatically remaining for that particular 10,000 amount, an invoice is created in the name of income tax India, and for that particular invoice the type will be withholding or withholding tax. So now what we can do is click on find. Okay, income tax India. Okay, and look for the amount of 10,000. Okay, see, an invoice is automatically created with the type of withholding tax, and you can see help record history to check it is created by apps manager, because system has created internally and it is created at 30th of September 9/1. Okay, so just now it has created. Okay, and you can see it is created in the name of where the vendor is income tax India. Okay, and it is created for an amount of 10,000 rupees. Okay, and the type is withholding tax. Okay, and you can see the invoice number, how system has generated the invoice number, then the convention, whatever it has used, the numbering convention. So it is withholding tax hyphen system generated number. So this is the system generated number, withholding tax hyphen system generated number. Okay, and this is the 10,000 amount. So now what you need to do is you need to click on actions, validate. Similar to any other invoice, you need to even validate this and make a payment. So from our pocket again, 100,000 rupees is going on. It's going out of our pocket. 90,000 against that particular vendor and 10,000 for this particular vendor. So total 100,000 is going out of our pocket, but 10,000 is going to the Income Tax India on behalf of the vendor, and 90,000 is directly going to the vendor. Okay, so this is how you create your withholding tax invoices. Generally, you should not go here and directly what you call select withholding tax and try to create the withholding. We should not be doing that way. We should allow system to generate that. Only once you allow the system to generate that, there is a proper link in the background. Okay, and also I'll show you that particular setup, whatever I was referring to in the payable option, wherein we say that at what stage we want system to generate the withholding tax. Okay, so this is where we are saying use withholding tax. So only once you check this checkbox, automatically that apply withholding tax checkbox will be defaulted to supplier and supplier side. If you uncheck this checkbox, then system will not allow you to do the withholding tax calculation. And apply withholding tax, at what stage you want the system to apply withholding tax? At invoice validation level, that is on the original invoice. In order for the system to calculate that reduction of the 10,000, at what stage you want to do, at invoice validation level, or when you are making a payment of that particular invoice, or at both invoice validation and payment term? Generally, it should be at an invoice validation time. If you say never, then obviously system will not calculate any withholding tax. And similarly, creation of the withholding tax, withholding invoice. At what stage you want the withholding invoice to be generated? That is, withholding tax invoice or the system generated invoice in the name of Income Tax India. At what stage you want the system to generate? Never, at invoice validation, or at a payment time. So generally, you select the invoice validation time. In some countries, they may say that withholding tax should be calculated at the time of payment. That is, unless and until the payment is generated, do not do any withholding tax. So in those cases, in those scenarios, you need to select apply withholding tax as at payment and create withholding invoice as at payment. But otherwise, in most of the countries, it is at withholding tax or at invoice validation time. Okay.
Arvind, you just shown the withholding invoice, right, for the tax authority. I mean, if I simply query the withholding type of invoices, is there any possibility by seeing that invoice to know what is the underlying original invoice?
Okay, good question. Okay, there are a couple of invoices because as part of my testing, I created some of the withholding tax invoices. So this is the invoice whatever we have generated. See, in the description you can see that. Can you see that? ABC. So you can see withholding tax for the ABC vendor for invoice of ABC 200. If you remember, the original invoice of this 10,000 is ABC 200. That's the invoice number. Similarly, put my cursor here. ABC 202.
No, but from the technical perspective, there should be some link. Description is a kind of a free text, or it can be changed based on applications, right?
Yeah, so this is the, what I'm saying is this is the system generated description. Okay, yes, you are right. Ideally, you should not be changing that, but if you want, you can change that. But I believe there is definitely in the background or in the tables, once you get into the table, there is some column which specifically says that what is the corresponding the original invoice. But from a front end, if you want to see, this is the link. Okay, but ideally, because yeah, but ideally in general, nobody will actually try to change the particular description. But definitely there will be some column in the table which will give you the original invoice. Okay.
Okay.